Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into something that's going to feel like a wild ride through the mind of one of the most fascinating signs in the zodiac, Gemini. If you know someone born between May 21st and June 20th, ruled by Mercury, the planet of communication, you've probably got some thoughts about them already. Maybe you think they're the life of the party, always chatting and making you laugh, or maybe you've heard they're a bit tricky, two-faced or hard to pin down. Well, we're here to unpack all of that with the Gemini Paradox, why they're both the most understood and misunderstood sign. I've always been intrigued by Geminis. My cousin Lisa is one, and she's a whirlwind of ideas and energy. So I can't wait to explore this with you. Whether you're a Gemini yourself or just curious about what makes them tick, grab a comfy spot, maybe a cup of tea, and let's dig into the layers of this air sign together. Trust me, by the end, you're going to see them in a whole new light. Let's start with the basics. Geminis are known for their quick wit, their love of conversation, and their ability to jump from one topic to the next like they're skipping stones on a lake. That's Mercury at work, giving them a mind that's always buzzing, always curious, always looking for the next thing to explore. They're the ones who can talk to anyone, anywhere, and leave you feeling like you've just had the best chat of your life. But here's where the paradox kicks in. While everyone seems to get that about them, there's this other side that people don't always see, or worse, they misjudge. They get labeled as flaky or indecisive, maybe even two-faced, because they can switch moods or opinions faster than you can blink. And that's where the misunderstanding starts. So let's take a closer look at why Geminis are both the most understood and the most misunderstood sign, and break down what's really going on. First off, let's talk about why people feel like they get Geminis. It's pretty simple. They're out there, social, and easy to read on the surface. Walk into a room with a Gemini, and you'll notice them right away. They've got this energy that pulls people in. Maybe it's the way they laugh, or how they can turn a boring moment into a story you can't stop listening to. My cousin Lisa, for example, can turn a trip to the grocery store into an adventure, pointing out funny labels or starting a debate about the best snack aisle. That's the Gemini charm, open, playful, and always ready to connect. People love that about them because it feels familiar, like they're an open book. You think you know them because they share so much, ideas, jokes, random facts, and they do it with this light, airy vibe that makes you feel included. It's no wonder they're seen as the social butterflies of the zodiac. But here's the catch. That openness is only part of the story. Now let's flip it. That same openness is where the misunderstanding creeps in. Because Geminis are so chatty and adaptable, people start assuming they're not serious or that they don't stick to anything. Ever heard someone say, "Oh, they're just a Gemini, they'll change their mind tomorrow"? I've heard that about Lisa more times than I can count. She'll be all in on a new hobby, say painting, spending hours with her brushes, and then a week later, she's on to photography, leaving the paints behind. To someone watching, it looks like she's flaky or can't commit. But here's the thing, Geminis aren't indecisive because they're lazy. They're indecisive because their minds are moving so fast they're already on to the next idea before the last one's done. It's not about not caring. It's about caring so much they want to explore everything. That's a big part of their paradox. People think they understand the surface, but they miss the depth. Let's dig into that two-faced label for a minute, because it's one of the biggest myths about Geminis. The idea comes from their duality. Gemini is represented by the twins, Castor and Pollux, which gives them this reputation for having two sides. And sure, they can switch gears. Happy one minute, thoughtful the next, or chatty with one friend and quiet with another. I've seen Lisa do this at family gatherings. She's the loudest with the cousins, telling stories. But with her mom, she's calm and attentive, almost like a different person. People see that and think, oh, she's fake, or she's playing both sides. But it's not about being dishonest. Geminis are just really good at adapting to the people around them. They're like mirrors reflecting what's needed in the moment. Laughter with one group, support with another. It's their way of connecting, not a sign they're hiding something. The misunderstanding happens when people take that flexibility as a lack of integrity, when really it's a strength. So why are they misunderstood? Part of it is that speed I mentioned. Their minds work so fast that others can't keep up. Imagine Lisa again. She'll start a conversation about a movie, then pivot to a book she read, then ask about your weekend, all in 5 minutes. If you're not on her wavelength, it can feel chaotic, like she's not focused. But to her, it's all connected. She's exploring ideas, testing them out, seeing where they lead. That intellectual flexibility is a huge part of who Geminis are. And it's something people often miss. They think it's scatterbrain, but it's more like a superpower. They can see multiple angles at once, which makes them amazing at problem solving or coming up with creative solutions. I remember when we were stuck on a group project, Lisa threw out 5 different ideas in 10 minutes, and one of them ended up being the winner. People don't always see that depth because they're too busy judging the surface. Let's talk about the emotional side, because that's another area where Geminis get a bad rap. They're air signs, so they're often seen as all head, no heart, but that's far from true. Geminis are incredibly emotionally aware. They pick up on vibes, on what's not being said, and they adjust accordingly. Lisa can tell when I'm off, even if I don't say a word, and she'll shift the conversation to something lighter to cheer me up. But because they don't wear their emotions on their sleeve like, say, a water sign might, people assume they don't feel deeply. That's a misunderstanding. Geminis feel a lot. They just process it through their mind first. They might overthink a breakup or a fight, analyzing every detail, which can make them seem detached when really, they're just trying to understand it. That emotional intelligence is a hidden gem, and it's part of why they're so good at connecting with others, even if people don't always recognize it. Now let's flip back to the understood part. Geminis are loved for their versatility. They can fit into any situation, any group, and make it work. That's why they're often the friend who knows everyone, the coworker who can handle any task, the partner who keeps things interesting. People get that about them, and it's why they're so popular. But that same versatility feeds into the misunderstanding. Because they can be so many things to so many people, others start questioning if any of it's real. Is Lisa the funny cousin, the thoughtful daughter, or someone else entirely? The truth is, she's all of those, and that's what makes her a Gemini. The paradox is that their ability to adapt is both their strength and the thing that gets them misjudged. Let's explore how this plays out in relationships, because that's where the Gemini paradox really shines. When a Gemini loves someone, they bring that same energy, excited, curious, always wanting to learn more about their partner. But because they're so adaptable, they might shift their behavior to match their partner's mood, which can confuse things. Maybe they're playful one day because you're in a silly mood, then serious the next because you're stressed. A partner might think, wait, which one is the real them? But it's not about being fake. It's about meeting you where you are. I've seen Lisa do this with her boyfriend. She'll match his quiet nights with deep talks or his active days with spontaneous plans. It's her way of showing care, but it can leave others wondering if she's genuine. The deeper you look, though, the more you see it's just her trying to connect in the best way she knows how. That adaptability also shows up in their work life. Geminis are great at juggling tasks. They can write a report, brainstorm a new idea, and chat with a client all in the same hour. People understand that they're productive, but they might miss why. It's not just multitasking for the sake of it. It's that Mercury-driven mind craving variety and stimulation. If they're stuck on one thing too long, they get restless. And that's where the indecisive label comes from. But it's not indecision. It's a need to keep growing, to keep exploring. Lisa once switched jobs because she felt stagnant. And while some thought she was flaky, she saw it as a chance to learn something new. That's a Gemini, always moving, always seeking, and people don't always get the motivation behind it. Let's talk about how this paradox affects them personally. Geminis can feel the weight of being misunderstood. It hurts when people call them unreliable or fake, especially when they're trying so hard to connect. Lisa's told me she sometimes pulls back from friendships because she's tired of explaining herself. That emotional awareness I mentioned earlier means they know when they're being judged, and it can make them second-guess their natural tendencies. They might start overthinking how they come across, which can lead to that duality people notice. Trying to be one version of themselves for one person, another for someone else. But it's not a split personality, it's a response to feeling like they have to prove their worth. That's a tough spot to be in, and it's part of what makes their paradox so complex. So how do we break these myths? First, let's ditch the idea that Geminis are two-faced. They're not lying, they're adapting, and that's a skill, not a flaw. Next, let's rethink indecisiveness. It's not that they can't decide, it's that they see too many options and want to explore them all. And finally, let's recognize their emotional depth. They might not cry on cue, but they feel deeply and show it in their own way. Through words, through listening, through being there when it counts. When I was going through a rough patch, Lisa didn't hug me or say much. She just sat with me and talked about random stuff until I felt better. That's Gemini care, and it's real, even if it doesn't look like what people expect. Let's think about how this plays out in friendships. Geminis are the friends who keep things lively. They'll plan a game night, start a debate, or just call you to chat about nothing. People love that, and it's why they're so understood in that context. But if they cancel plans because they're chasing a new idea, or if they seem distracted, friends might take it personally. The key is to see it as part of their nature. Not a rejection, but a sign they're growing. Lisa once bailed on a movie night to finish a book she'd started, and while I was annoyed at first, I realized it was her way of feeding her mind. That's the Gemini paradox. They're there for you, but they're also chasing their own path, and it's not always easy to balance. In romantic relationships, this paradox can be even more pronounced. A Gemini partner might shower you with attention one day, texts, dates, deep conversations, and then pull back the next to process their thoughts. It can feel like hot and cold, and partners might wonder where they stand. But it's not about losing interest. It's about their need to think things through. Lisa's been in relationships where her partner thought she was distant, but really she was just overanalyzing to make sure she was being fair. That intellectual flexibility means they want to get it right, and that can lead to misunderstandings if the other person doesn't see the effort behind it. Let's look at a practical example to bring this home. Imagine a Gemini at work. They might start a project with tons of enthusiasm, pitching ideas left and right, and everyone gets why they're valuable. But if they switch focus to a new task halfway through, co-workers might think they're unreliable. The truth is, they're not dropping the ball. They're seeing a better way forward and adapting. That's their strength, and it's why they're so good at innovation, even if people don't always appreciate it in the moment. Lisa's done this at her jobs, jumping from one role to another, and while some bosses saw it as flighty, she always landed on her feet because she learned something new each time. The emotional toll of this paradox can be heavy for Geminis. They might feel torn between wanting to please everyone and staying true to themselves, which can lead to burnout or self-doubt. Lisa's told me she sometimes feels like she's not enough. Too much for some, not enough for others, because of how people perceive her. That's the downside of being so adaptable. It can leave them questioning their own identity, but it also pushes them to grow, to find ways to balance their many sides, which is part of what makes them so fascinating. So how can we support a Gemini? Give them space to explore. Don't judge when they switch gears, because that's how they thrive. Listen when they talk, because that's how they process. And don't assume you know them fully. Ask questions, dig deeper, because there's always more to discover. I've learned with Lisa that checking in with a simple, "What's on your mind?" opens up a whole new side of her. One that's thoughtful and real, beyond the surface chatter. Let's wrap this up by thinking about what the Gemini paradox teaches us. They're understood for their social magic, their quick minds, their ability to connect, but misunderstood when people don't see the intention behind their actions. They're not two-faced, they're multifaceted. They're not indecisive, they're expansive. And they're not shallow. They're deeply aware, just in their own way. That's the beauty of Gemini. They challenge us to look beyond the labels and see the person underneath. What do you think? Have you seen this paradox in a Gemini you know? Maybe a friend like Lisa? Or even yourself if you're a twin? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. This has been such a fun dive into the Gemini world, and I hope it's given you a new perspective. If you enjoyed it, Give it a like, hit that subscribe button, and ring the bell for more Zodiac adventures.